The Day After is a 1983 TV drama directed by Nicholas Meyer.
Yes, before I talk about it, don't forget, click down there to subscribe at any time if you like what you're watching. So we've already spoken about Threads on this channel, so go and check out that video in a minute. And lots of people in the comments talked about The Day After, which was released, it was broadcast on American TV the year before, so 1983. And it's a very similar kind of thing. Basically, it looks at one particular city, in this case Kansas City, and the threat of nuclear war in the background of the story, and then bombs drop and the effects of that afterwards. So much like Threads, we have several different characters. So you've got Jason Robards, who plays a doctor, Jobeth Williams, who plays a colleague of his, another doctor. Steve Guttenberg's in there as he's like a college student, isn't he? And John Lithgow, I think he works at the university, doesn't he?
That's right,
and there's various, there's other actors in there as well playing various different members of their families and other characters and things like that. And because obviously Kansas is quite a rural, obviously you've got Kansas City, but around that it's quite rural, and there's a lot of farms, so we see a lot of farmland, and it happens to be where there's a lot of missile silos as well, because there is a lot of open space. And a lot of these farms are quite close to where these missile silos are. And we also see some military as well, which is slightly different from Threads, because we never really see any military people. Well, maybe after the bombs we see a little bit, but we see them before the bombs hit. Well, that's it really. That is a drama, first of all. We meet these characters, what they're going about their daily life. And in the background, there is the threat of this war between Russia and America brewing. I mean, in Threads, it's about the Middle East. In this, it's about Germany, basically. They're invading West Germany. But I'm going to keep talking about Threads because it is very closely related, and it is quite a similar film. But in this, the characters are far more aware of what's going on. There's lots of news reports and radio, constantly talking about this conflict, and it happens over quite a short period of time. The build-up is very quick, whereas in Threads it's over a slightly longer period, I think. Yeah. But the characters in Threads don't really, as a viewer, you're kind of aware what's going on, but a lot of them in Threads, they don't really pay much attention. So when stuff starts happening, there's all a bit of a shock, whereas in The Day After, they're well aware and pretty much terrified. And there's people evacuating and getting down into shelters and things like that. And while in Threads they are preparing to a point, because there's like how to survive and things like that, instructions printed in newspapers and things like that, they're still not really taking it that seriously.
No, there's much more that kind of keep calm, carry on attitude.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas
go down the pipe, there's a bomb dropped.
Yeah. Yes.
Whereas in America, it's more, in that film, it's more... Yeah,
shit yourself and run away. Not that I'm saying that's what America would do, obviously, but maybe they're more well informed, perhaps.
Probably better.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean,
safer.
it doesn't really help anyone, does it? To be honest, in both films, it's pretty much annihilation everywhere. Yeah, and then about 40 minutes in, the bombs drop. But what we do see, which we don't see in Threads, is where it takes place, there are lots of these missile silos. We see with the characters all these missiles taking off, and of course, as soon as that happens, they know that's it. There's going to be missiles coming back because those silos are going to be targets, and then the real panic sets in, and they're desperately trying to get out of the city and away from everything, or they're getting down into their basements or wherever they can sort of shelter. And then obviously the bombs hit. And then we see the after effects of that. And much like Threads, there's radiation sickness and nuclear winter. While Threads takes longer and looks over a longer period of what happens, and towards the end jumps forward quite a few years. The Day After, it's not really stated how long after the bombs have dropped the end of the film is, but it feels like a few weeks, maybe, not much more than that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we covered Threads.
Yeah.
And is this so Threads came out in 84, this came out in 83. It was kind of around a time where quite a few films were coming out, and quite a few of you have mentioned some of those other ones in the comments. Great. Obviously, Testament was another one that came out, I think that was 83 as well, in America, and I think that was kind of a cross between the two. I think I've seen that one, and I think it just focuses on like one town, Kevin Costner's in that one.
All right.
And then you had in 1986 in Britain, When the Wind Blows, which was an animation actually, fused with kind of documentary footage, and that's by Raymond Briggs, the guy that did The Snowman. So a bit of a difference there. And Father Christmas, which is a great one.
Yep.
But so there were lots of them. There was also the War Game, which was a documentary film drama that came out in the 60s, another British one. Which is where a nuclear bomb goes off in Kent, our county. Lovely, thanks for that. And over the years, there have been many, kind of nuclear war films, documentaries that have happened. I think one of the early ones was On the Beach, which was a 1959 film with Gregory Peck and Fred Astaire and Anthony Perkins from Psycho. And I think they're set in Australia. I've never seen it, but it's sort of a nuclear bomb that goes, kind of doomsday type film.
Does Fred Astaire dance away from the explosion?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Maybe he does. That would be fun to watch. Over the years, obviously there have been quite a few, and the 80s seemed to churn out quite a few. Obviously, there were things still going on. So this obviously is interesting because we did cover Threads, so we can kind of look at the two of them. I think. I was kind of expecting more of a disaster film. But actually it wasn't that. And I think it was, I don't think it was, it's not as hard-hitting as, Threads is very visceral and very in-your-face. And I suppose because partly it's got that kind of documentary feel, and maybe because it's a British film, and obviously British films have that, they're kind of well-known for being either the realism side, the kitchen sink side of things, TV that was going on at that time was quite, in your face and either political or edgy, and they were trying stuff that hadn't been done before. So I think that's a difference between the two.
I think at the time when this was broadcast, I think there was 3 major networks.
Right.
I think it got 8 million viewers, which I think today is basically impossible in America because it's just too fragmented.
Right. Okay.
But then I think at the time it was the most watched TV movie ever. I'm not sure if it was beaten by anything ever. Obviously, as more time went on, like I say, it became more fragmented. So whether it was ever topped, I'm not 100% sure. But at the time, it was the most watched thing. As far as the tone of it, I think obviously over here. It was on Threads was on BBC, there's no advertisers to appease and things like that. Whereas on American networks, obviously, advertisers are only going to want to advertise on things that they agree with or they think are going to get lots of viewers. But before this was broadcast, they didn't know it was going to get watched by 8 million people, and if they had, then I'm sure they would have been able to sell. All the advertising 10 times over, but before, people were a bit shaky on it, and even the network kind of took it away from Nicholas Meyer for a few months because it was too bleak, and they didn't think they were going to be able to broadcast it in the way it was, and they started to recut it, and then he managed to convince them to get him back on board, he changed it back more to his vision. Ultimately he said, this is not. I signed on for the script that you gave me, and that's what I filmed. You cutting it to make it more palatable is not what I agreed to.
Right, sure.
So and what was broadcast was much closer to what he originally intended.
But I think it was. I enjoyed it. Can I enjoy a film about such disasters? I don't know. But I think it was better than I thought it would be. And even the when the bombs hit. They did it quite well. There's a few effects that...
There's a kind of X-ray effect going on, which is a bit odd.
If you know the Repo Man, the bit with the skeleton, it's very like that.
Yes.
But actually, it's they use a lot of stock footage from actual nuclear bombs going off.
Which is the same,
which is the same as
well.
Threads. I think this seems to go on for longer, and there's much more kind of explosions, buildings, all those famous stuff you've seen, which obviously in America you can do. You can't really do that in Britain because I don't think we have footage of. I don't think they've ever tested a nuclear bomb in this country, have they?
Not in this country.
They tend to do it in the sea.
Yeah.
Not on desert land like they do in America. So in America, obviously, you have stock footage of bombs going off, and they use a lot of that in this film. And it's effective, and even the stuff that they've clearly filmed, they clearly have a lot more extras than they had in Threads.
Yeah.
There's loads more people running down the street.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like you said, you were expecting a sort of disaster film kind of thing with maybe not a happy ending, but not a completely bleak ending. But kind of, well, I don't want to spoil it. Yeah, it doesn't have a happy ending
Sure.
like I was like the kind of thing that I was expecting. And while personally I thought Threads was more, I don't know, had an even more hopeless feeling to it, possibly because it does sort of jump forward a few years and things don't really improve at all. Whereas in The Day After, we don't jump forward, so but it is still bleak. There's still people that are able to do things like, help in the hospital and stuff like that, and we do hear from the president over the radio, so we know the country's not completely decimated. Whereas in Threads, you never really know how widespread the destruction is. But because you do flash forward a few years, and yeah, they're all just completely hopeless. And
I mean, The Day After, you feel like they might get back up
possibly
slightly sooner than in Threads, where literally they've kind of forgotten how to talk, and they're completely having to start
gone back to square one, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's where it's different. I think The Day After's it was perfectly well done. I thought, I mean, obviously it's got a the other big difference with Threads is this has a cast that people that whereas Threads, yes, the two leads, you might recognise some other things, but they certainly don't have the cast that this one does. No. That's whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think both work in their favour. I think the cast is very good in The Day After. They're all strong cast, strong supporting cast.
But I think basically they are about the same thing. They're very similar structurally, but I think they're quite good companion pieces because they are sufficiently different that they give you a slightly different take on the same thing ultimately.
Yeah. And in fact, the one question I had was for our viewers, and that's because obviously it sounded like a lot of people saw Threads when they were in school. Yeah. Did they show Day After in school? Did you? I mean, if you saw it, when did you see it? I'd be quite interested to know. If it was something that was shown a lot afterwards.
How much did it scar you?
Yeah, and was it because a lot of people were, we seem to have opened up old wounds with people because they clearly were terrified by watching Threads for that first time. Did The Day After have that same effect on probably, I suppose, Americans? I don't know how many Brits have seen this one. Do you have the same scars in your life as we did with Threads?
So if you want to watch it, there has been a Blu-ray just released in the US from a label called Kino Lorber. Kino Lorber.
Oh, okay.
I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. Yeah, much like Arrow and people like that, they release sort of cult films and old films that they restore. So yeah, they've just released it over in the States recently. It's got the TV cut on it, and also the theatrical cut. It's basically because it got such high ratings when it was on the TV. The network thought, we'll stick it in cinema, and like in the UK and Australia and other countries, it got a theatrical release, and that cut is obviously in a widescreen format, so I think it is cropped. It's not like that you're seeing any more picture, and it's about 5 minutes longer. So, but it's nice to have both versions on there, and it's got a commentary and an interview with Nicholas Meyer, and also with Jobeth Williams as well. So yeah, it's a nice little package, and unfortunately it is Region A, so if you're outside of the States, you will need a player that can play that. And it even has a reversible cover, if that's your bag. And and yeah, I mean, it is, if you're in the UK, it is available on DVD, but I think it's probably out of print because it's quite expensive. So if you go on Amazon, for example, I think it's like 20 quid or something like that. So, but it is around if you desperately want to see it and you can't play that. But yeah, no, I would recommend. Now, if you have watched Threads and you enjoyed it, you thought it was an interesting film, then this is, like I say, it makes a good companion piece, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, if you want a depressing afternoon of death and destruction.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
There's a double bill for you.
Yeah. But if you are able to watch this, then I would recommend you picking up this one up, because it will. I picked up less than 20 quid, so cheaper than the DVD, and particularly on the TV version, which I think is the one that's been fully restored. The picture is pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, worth checking out if you can.
So that was The Day After, and as always, if you like the video or the film, then let us know in the comments below.
Yep, and there's the links to check out some of our other videos. So have a look at those and join us on Twitter and Facebook. And we'll see you again soon for another video.